move, now move, and go. That circle, get out.
So Danny and Ebony, brilliant to see you, and thanks very much for coming on board today. I wanted to touch on something. Obviously, I think we all agree it's a fantastic time for women's boxing. It seems to be an era seems to have started where we've come out of the torchbearer time, where obviously we had Jane Couch and Chrissy Martin, and to an extent it moved on to another generation with Nicola Adams and Katie Taylor, and we had torchbearers for the sport. But I think in the last few weeks, something momentous to my mind seems to have happened in women's boxing, which means that we've moved out of the torchbearer era and we're into a much broader depth of talent, where we can talk about a whole range of women's boxing, and it's not just the current field. We can talk about what's coming through with Team GB. The amateur scene is very much alive and looking absolutely fantastic. So a great time for women's boxing. But I think there's an aspect of women's boxing that Danny has brought up that we're here to discuss, really. And that is specifically, Danny, you were talking about the upcoming fight between, mooted fight that Ebony is sort of cajoling for with Shannon Courtney. And you felt that there was too much emphasis within this fight on the fact that they are two good-looking girls. And, you kind of objected to that and said, look, this is going down the wrong route. This is not something that we should be pushing to advance women's boxing. I kind of don't agree with the fact that they're in a way selling themselves on that basis. Can you just enlighten us, Danny, a bit more about what your objection to the sort of formulation of this potential fight was?
Yeah, sure. It's nothing against the people involved, and I don't think Shannon did much of this anyway. No disrespect to Ebony, but I think it was pretty one-sided on that score. I don't think it advances the cause of women's boxing as a whole to sell a fight or a set of fights predominantly on sexuality. I think women's boxing has fought for such a long time to achieve respect on the basis of athletic ability, and eventually they want to achieve parity with the men's game. Now that's going to take a lot of factors, probably far more than we've got time to discuss today, but I don't think predominantly selling a fight based on how good looking the participants are and appealing to that kind of lowest common denominator fan base. And I think even Ebony would have to admit a vast amount of her fans on social media, they're there because they think she's attractive more so than they follow her boxing career. I'd wonder how many of them have actually seen her fight, for one example. And I just don't think I think it does a disservice to a lot of the other women out there who are trying to be recognised purely for their ability. And the ones coming through from the amateurs, you very rarely see this with the kind of new breed of females. You mentioned people earlier, or maybe Peter did, like Christy Martin and people like that. And in the early days, Mia St. John's a great example of someone who really pushed the sexual envelope, if you like, to help further her career. And I don't have anything against the individuals that do this. I think male, female, whatever gender you are, do whatever you can to build your profile and further your career. It's a tough enough career anyway in boxing. Do what you have to do. But I think as an impartial observer, I look at it and say, well, is this putting women's boxing where its advocates would like it to be?
Okay, Ebony, what do you say to that? Do you think you can combine sexy with sporting? I mean, do you think you should, in a way, hide your attractiveness in any way if you are attractive? If you're trying to be a female boxer, do you think you should only be competing, on the level of skill that you can display in the ring? How do you see that?
Well, firstly, Danny saw like one comment or one thing about that fight. Pre actually talking about that, it was like a side comment saying, and it would be good because we both look good, and the weigh-ons would be high, and like. Like if you know me and you follow me, like I like a banter, and I like just muck around. But actually, pre to that, I was saying it'd be a good fight, actually I didn't even really want the fight. As soon as it was just all the British people saying, oh, we want you over here, and we want you to fight Shannon Courtney, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it'd be a good fight. We're both, skilled. We both fight hard. It'd be an exciting fight. We're both kind of at the same level, and yeah, we both look good. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, I mean, in the end, I just think that you're taking advantage, saying that I was predominantly selling the fight on looks, but I really wasn't. Like, I made a bunch of other comments as well, and pre actually even saying that, I didn't even say the look stuff. Like that was like added on comments. Because, you know, like personally, I think when it's women's boxing, I think we need to draw in as much crowd as we can. And I'm telling you, like my fight, like you said about my followers, I bet you any money they'll do anything to come to like a weigh-in or come to a meet and greet or come to a fight just to watch me fight. Because because they've actually followed me. And guess what that means, Danny? Money. And guess what that means? More eyes on boxing, more eyes on women's boxing, and maybe more people going, wow, these girls can actually fight, you know? And like, guess what? You can actually look like feminine and fight. You know, you're talking about Christy Martin, you're talking about, you know, Jane Couch, and then you went on to talk about the next generation of Nicola Adams and Katie Taylor, who, no offense to those girls, but they aren't very extremely feminine. They're not, you know, like, you know, like as in they're not like, you know, like that kind of, they don't play it up, and they don't, and that's cool, and they don't have to do that. But I mean, as it's gone on, you know, as you go from those days to like now, it's getting more and more, because guess what? There's UFC fighters that are pretty, and they use their looks, and they have no problem being sexy. And so people are starting to see, hey, guess what? Like young girls will be like, oh, you know what? Boxing or MMA or martial arts isn't just for tomboys. It isn't just for girls that look masculine. There's actually, you know, I can be pretty and I can fight. You know, the amount of times that I hear, oh, you're too pretty to fight. This you know, stereotype that, you know, oh, because you're pretty or because you're very feminine, you shouldn't fight or you can't fight. You know, the more feminine you are, and the more you embrace your femininity and being sexy, that means that you're less capable. It's not really like that. You know,
aren't you kind of penalising Ebony for being attractive here? When I mean, I did a quick search earlier on UFC fighters, female UFC fighters. I didn't search attractive UFC fighters. I just searched UFC fighters, and it came up with attractive UFC fighters of 2020. And these girls are exploiting their looks, and why shouldn't they? Because really, you know, boxing has always been called show business with blood, so you've got to use every avenue you can to get people to watch the fights. And I know your favourite fighter, for example, you know, Nazim Hamed, he was very iconoclastic, he's had a lot of very controversial things. He drew people in to watching him box, whether they wanted to see him win or whether they wanted to see him lose. They ended up watching him, and when they watched him, they saw the incredible skill level, and that maybe made them fall more in love with that side of it. So shouldn't Ebony at this early stage of her career be using every advantage she can to capitalise on what she needs to progress her career, which is people watching her fight? Yeah,
and that's the point, and that's what I'm getting across. Because
I'm sure that question was for me.
Can I just get Danny's response to that? I was kind of putting your point across. Danny, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I said at the very start of my argument, I have no problem with Ebony doing what she has to do to further her career. I mean, it's interesting that she said some of these other girls who aren't particularly feminine don't have to use their looks. And that's a very important point. When you're at an established stage of your career, when you've had a great amateur career behind you, your achievements speak for themselves. And there's less need to use other factors to heighten your profile. I agree with that. And I don't disrespect Ebony for doing so. What I do think is that there's a further impact, a wider impact on the women's sport as a whole, a side of boxing that's fought for so long for equality and perception.
So you feel it's a negative impact?
I do think it's a negative impact, yeah, because I see not just what Ebony does to promote herself, but I see the response that gets from followers and people on social media, and how they do seem to be more interested in the physical aspect than they are in the actual fighting. And I think that goes against some of what we've seen recently that you talked about earlier with Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper, with Katie Taylor going in against Delphine Pursoon again. If the message we're trying to get across, which seems to be what Ebony's saying, that these girls really can fight, they're not just good looking, we can see great action from them. I don't think selling a fight on looks and having a fan base created largely on physical attractiveness helps that cause, that's all.
Okay, Ebony, and what would you say to that? You basically saying with the skill level that's available in women's boxing, you don't need to push this attractiveness side. Do you think that it has a negative impact, as Danny says, or do you feel it has a positive impact? Do you feel it draws people in?
Yeah, I think that it draws people in. I mean, you can have a look at like how my followers and that respond, but I'm telling you right now, they're responding to that anyways, to anyone's posts. You know, like it's not just because of me. I just have a laugh about it because I'm light and I like a banter. You know what I mean? I mean, they still comment like that on everyone else's stuff. You know, if you have a little tiny bit of whatever sexy or skin, I didn't even show my skin. Like, you know, all my stuff is in training gear. I'm in, like, when I weigh in, I'm in underwear just like everyone else, you know, like, I mean, there's no, like, I'm not like posing on a bed. I'm not like trying to do anything like that. Like, I mean, it's realistic. It's not even, and even the girls that do that, that's totally fine. They can do that. But no, I don't think so. I don't think it's bad. I think it's, I don't think it really matters. I think that they're just showing that, you know, that it can be accepted. Like, why shouldn't it be accepted? Why should it be so bad? And why do you need to judge and push this narrative that because we're feminine, because we embrace our femininity, because we want to be sexy and also box and be athletes as well as being sexy, why is it so bad? And why do you have to push a narrative that we shouldn't get respect for it? And that means that we should be disrespected, or that you're disrespecting me because of it, or in whatever sense. And you go and talk to your friends and go, oh, look at this Ebony, you know, pushing them, you know, it's so bad for the sport and blah, blah, blah. No, that's because you're pushing that narrative. Maybe if you're more open-minded like other people, and you're like open-minded, you know what, hey, it's not a bad thing. Let her use the things. Guess what? Ryan Garcia does it. Joshua, you know, Anthony Joshua does it. He's got a lot of women that follow him. You know, a lot of women that follow him. You're just going to need to go on his Instagram and check out his photos. And there's pretty much 80% women putting like little squirt marks and like hot fire marks on all these photos. You know what I mean? You probably don't look at it because, you know,
hasn't
people watching my page and reading my comments. I don't know. But, you know, honestly, though, like, I mean...
Honestly, I can't get away from your feeds. Like, I don't follow you, and you're on my feed constantly because of people liking and retweeting your comments.
Yeah, they like it.
Just to interject there, Annie, can I just put that point that Ebony's making there? Hasn't this always been part of boxing? You know, boxers tend to be young, fit people, which therefore tends to be attractive. And people that are attractive tend to exploit this. I mean, you know, go back to Billy Walker competing with Beatlemania in the 50s. You know,
the original blonde bomber.
It was so pretty. And talking about Anthony Joshua now putting all those Instagram posts up, you know, and he's greased up and all this sort of stuff. And isn't that just an...
Is he greased up though? Is he? Or is he just sweating from work?
He puts water all over him. He's under the waterfall looking all like... Imagine if I stood under a waterfall with no top on and water all over me.
But
I don't think I want to be imagining that at 20 past 9 on a UK morning.
He's exploiting.
Sorry,
that always part of the male game, the boxing game as well, Danny. And now the women are in there. Can they not do that as well?
Well, there's two issues there. One, it's very, very rare in the men's game that you see that. Ryan Garcia is a bit of an outlier where that goes, and he can certainly fight. He's on the fringes of world class now. He's not a 4-0 novice doing this. And with Anthony Joshua, he's well established as an Olympic gold medalist and unified world champion before a lot of females are now, and probably not just females, probably male fans as well, are jumping on the bandwagon who admire his physique. But the flip side of that is that male boxing doesn't have the same stigma attached to it as female boxing. They don't have this long fight for acceptance. They don't have this history of being disregarded and put down in comparison to the male sport. You know, it shouldn't be me here as a man taking the kind of feminist viewpoint on this. I find that hilarious. I mean, you know, women's boxing for ages has been disrespected for the fact that, oh, you still see it now on our YouTube videos, some of the comments, oh, I don't watch women's boxing, it's not as good as the men. Similar to how we have women's football or soccer over here. You know, you get a lot of those disparaging comparative remarks, which I don't particularly appreciate. But there's certainly a lack of depth in female boxing compared to the men. I agree with that. But at the very top level, I think the skill levels are comparable. But the problem is, when you have people out there who only focus on the sexuality side of things, I think that further serves to diminish what the women are achieving. And I do think that's a disservice to the people that, even like Ebony, who train really hard and work really hard and want to be known for their athletic ability. I don't think it does them any favours.
It does me favours because I put bums on seats and I get paid more money because people want to come and watch. And you know what? Like, I mean, I've already got such a huge fan base in the UK and I'm only 4-0 and I haven't fought since February. And guess what? Because I haven't had fights, I can't put my fights on. I can't put my highlights on. I'm not going to put up my sparring videos. I'm not going to put up my full fight videos for people to watch. I need to have fights. I'm only 4-0. You know what I mean? The less advantage I give my opponents, the better, realistically. So I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is continue to build my brand, build my name, and build the fact that I believe in being who you are and embracing what you have, and not giving a fuck if people judge you. And if people want to disrespect me, or people want to lower their respect for me because I am the way I am, because I look the way I look, then that's their problem, not my problem. Because I know I'm so confident in my skills that when I get in that ring that I'm going to impress people. You know what I mean? and I don't have.
No one's disrespecting you just because of how you look. It's that whole hate me because I'm pretty thing. It's rubbish. You know, no one's disrespecting
really
you because you're. Well, no one disrespects you just because you look a certain way.
You're not, sorry, Danny. Sorry, I don't want to argue, but you're not a pretty woman, so you wouldn't know what it feels like to be hated.
I'm not a pretty man either.
So you wouldn't know what it feels like to have people jealous of you.
That's a brilliant summation of your argument there, that you just encapsulated really what we've been talking about, and you put your point across very well. So Danny, I think we should probably just wrap it up here, because I think we've kind of gone over the ground of the main points. And Ebony, I think that was a brilliant summation and a brilliant riposte to Danny that you just finished off there. And Danny, I'll just give you the last word, because I think Ebony came back very well there. Just quickly, can you just summarise your argument? I know you have done over the course of this interview, but just in sort of 20 seconds, what you would like to see rowed back in women's boxing, or how you would like to see it pushed forward, how you would put it in your objection to maybe what Ebony has just said.
Sure. I think the only way we ever achieve true equality between the genders in boxing is that they're judged by the same criteria. And I think men's boxing is very rarely, if at all, judged based on the sexuality or how good looking the performers are. When you look at a big fight with Anthony Joshua and Klitschko, or Joshua and Park, or whoever it might be, you're talking predominantly about the athletic ability, the excitement of the fight, all the stuff that we're used to seeing in boxing. And I want to see the same for female boxing, as something that it's not even commented on. It's just accepted, just like the men's boxing is. Okay, guys. Well, look, thanks very much for putting those arguments across. And now we can hand over to the vote. So if you think Ebony should be allowed to do whatever she wants and push her, as she said, get the bums on seats through whatever avenue she can and exploit whatever advantages she has, then please vote for Ebony. If you think that, as Danny says, that it should be judged purely on athletic ability, or predominantly on athletic ability, and we should pull this out of the women's game, then vote for Danny. But thank you both very much for your contribution, and an argument I'm sure that is going to rage and rage, as it really has raged, in different forms throughout boxing history. But thanks very much, guys, and let's see how the vote comes in.